Alright, guys. So, welcome to another Pickled Dragon Unscripted. And I had a question that I told one of the subscribers that I would cover probably in a video by itself because it's such a big topic. And that was his question for me was a favorite villain that I have run in my campaign. And I think it's an interesting question because your villain, your primary villain of your campaign, is oftentimes if you have like a running story arc. If you're just running one adventure after another and just kind of playing it old school loosey goosey, you don't necessarily need to have you know a primary villain. But if you want to run a storyline with a antagonist, a memorable antagonist, which I oftentimes do, um, constructing that villain is very, very important and a tedious process. It's not something that you can just say, I want you players to hate this guy because he's the bad guy and have it go off. But the truth is that you have to really um, take time and cultivating your villain and and start getting that villain under the skin of your players, and to the point where just a mere mention of that name is going to just create a reaction from your players. So I think it was a few years after third edition came out, I started a new campaign, and I knew I wanted to do something with Tharizdun. I had toyed around with the cult of Tharizdun in the campaign previous to that one, and the party seemed to really react strongly to that idea, and um, I really I really I really wanted to do more with it. But at the time, the campaign we were running had Orcus as the primary villain, and um, and it wasn't even so much Orcus as the threat of Orcus, because in a previous video I discussed that orb that he was imprisoned in, and the party had to do something with it before he was released. So it was just more like the threat of Orcus and all of the different powers that were vying to claim the orb for themselves. Um, so I got I think Tharizdun has evolved over the years. He at one time he was the god of madness, and he was a god that all the other gods feared. He wanted to unmake the multiverse, and a coalition between both good and evil gods came together and they couldn't defeat him, they couldn't destroy him, but they were able to imprison him. So I kind of latched on this idea that he was the Armageddon trigger, and that if he were ever to be released, he would wipe out everything, unmake everything, because he was completely insane. So part of me, I got to thinking, what kind of villain would get behind something like that? And the obvious choice would be just a madman. I just want to destroy a Joker-style character. And, but then I thought, that's kind of easy. So I started building on a previous villain I'd used from the previous campaign, Hans Drubel. And while he wasn't the main antagonist from the previous campaign, he made several memorable appearances and really upset the party in a dramatic fashion. Um, and so I thought, well, why don't we do something more with his story? So I constructed this story where, and of course the party had no idea this at the time. They just knew him as a blackguard, an anti-paladin that worked for the forces of evil. But but I wanted to give him more of a dimension. So as they researched his story and tried to find out more about this villain, they quickly learned that, well, he was once a paladin. He once had a family and children, and so what happened to this person? You know, why did he go down this path of evil? They found out that his family had been taken and he had been taken. And it wasn't until he returned many years later and his family never resurfaced that he began this all these evil acts. And so eventually the party learned, and the strange thing is whenever he was committing these evil acts, he would have this horrible anguish, this look of anguish on his face. He would oftentimes sob after murdering somebody or committing evil acts. And what they found out much later was that Hans, his soul was actually trapped elsewhere, and that a demon had inhabited his body, and it was through the sword Ravage that the demon maintained control. And Ravage was this evil blade that he carried around. There was an added dimension, you know. Do they just go after this guy? He's the head of the cult of Tharizdun. He's trying to unmake everything. Do they just try to kill him and unravel this cult, or do they try to free him? You know, obviously the path of least resistance is not to go into the abyss or go into hell and try to liberate his soul. Rather, instead, it's it would be to kill the guy. So it was a very difficult choice that they had in front of them. Well, about a third of the way into the campaign, there was a race for this holy item, or unholy item, whatever you want to speak it, term it. This relic of Tharizdun. The party got to it first and had it, and one of the party members, Cuthalion, he died, and for a time his body was buried with this relic. And there were two other party members who were kind of your ring bearers, the relic bearers. That was Katsuo and Kahuna. This relic actually imprinted on them, whoever bore the item, whoever bore it for a certain amount of time, imprinted on them a piece of the avatar of Tharizdun. So the character, they didn't know why, but they were instructed to act a little bit more chaotically, a little bit shorter tempered. But Cuthalion had it by far the longest, and he was even buried with it for a while. He was killed in a ruined city, and his father, Lolinder, he wanted his son's body returned. So the party's like, oh, that makes sense, So they ventured back to this ruined city to go get his body back, where they had buried him after he had been killed. And his body was gone. Well, the Avatar had gestated in him long enough, essentially, to bring him back, and he started doing horrific things. He actually beat the party back to town and started committing these horrific acts of violence and so forth. And the one thing I realized very quickly is that the party, I was getting a much better reaction out of Cuthalion as the villain than Hans Drubel. And so I made the decision a third of the way into the campaign, the reaction I want I'm getting from this villain rather than Hans. And so I tried to turn, and I successfully turned Hans into more of a tragic figure, into a figure that, we need to go rescue his soul because we can use his aid against Cuthalion. And I turned Cuthalion into the primary villain of the campaign. And Cuthalion eventually kidnapped, and I called him Kahuna earlier, that was a previous character, his name was Grishma. He kidnapped Grishma and was able to steal the imprinted piece of the avatar that was on Grishma from his body for his own, and course, that player character did not, or that character did not survive very long, much longer after that. But um, I take that back. I think Grishma did survive that encounter. I think he was rescued, but he still lost his little piece of the Avatar, and Kuthalion grew stronger for it, and that left Katsuo. Katsuo was the only piece left, and Kuthalion, he needed that final piece to ascend to the full Avatar of Tharizdun. So it was that was all that was between him and basically having the power to release Tharizdun from his prison as the Avatar. And it became such a desperate campaign for the party that they went so far. Now, one of the things, all my campaigns have a heavy dose of religion in it. The gods are very important festivals, and I mentioned it quite a bit in previous Instagram posts. How important it is in my world that if there's no doubt that gods exist, it's going to have a very heavy impact on the cultures of the people around them. So the the idea of dying and your soul passing on is a very it's a very heavy thing. And so when the party was so worried that Kuthalion was going to capture Katsuo and unify the Avatar and release Tharizdun, that the Katsuo actually was murdered by his own henchmen. And so his soul, with this piece of Tharizdun imprinted on it, was actually sent to the Abyss instead of to Elysium, where he expected to be set and be safe. Well, that sparked a huge storyline where the party had to race Kuthalion. Once Kuthalion learned that Katsuo was dead and sent to the Abyss, they had to race to the Abyss to try to recover the soul of Katsuo before Kuthalion could. It was probably the best villain I'd ever created, and it happened very organically and very accidentally, which I think is the best way of handling that sort of thing. The interactions that we had between Kuthalion and the party were extensive. There would be a lot of sessions would close with cliffhangers. Kuthalion took a direct interest in the party, and being a former party member himself, he of course took an interest in what the party was up to, and especially since they were opposing him. But he much like today's Curse of Strahd, where Strahd is constantly meddling with the party, he was constantly getting involved in party affairs and interacting with them. And there a number of times the sessions would end on cliffhangers, so we would have these week-long email sessions where we would do the role play, and then at the beginning of the next session we would read aloud the role play that happened. And maybe I'll post a little of that below, but a little of those interactions below, I should say. But that the shift from Hans Drubel to Kuthalion as the primary villain of that campaign was probably the best move I could have made, because it turned into an amazing campaign and a campaign finale that I'll never forget. So that's to answer that question. The most memorable villain I've ever run was one that came up by accident. A former party member, of all things. I never expected it, but eventually Hans' soul was freed, and he did help in the fight against Kuthalion. They never could kill Kuthalion directly. They eventually had to go to a place called the Well of Life, which is kind of the place where the gods had created the multiverse, and they had to use the power of creation to separate the Avatar from Cuthalion and undo what this relic of Tharizdun had done to their former friend. So that's it. I mean, my most memorable villain, Cuthalion Sea Star, former party member. So in the meantime, I'm gonna put a clip of a video. There was back when I had my campaigns on Obsidian Portal. It's a website hosting place for D&D campaigns. There was an artist named Nicole who she would take memorable characters from campaigns and do little stories and drawings of them and post them on YouTube. And I don't think she's done it for like 10 years, but in any case, she did one of Hans Drubel, and I still have that video, so I'll clip a little of it on the end here. But in the meantime, happy gaming, y'all. And as always, be heroic. The information on the giveaway should be posted pretty soon, if not already. So the giveaway again, all you need to do is subscribe. I'll put. I'm not sure of the date of the drawing. I think I'm going to do 2 weeks. 2 weeks is what I think I'll do. So from tomorrow, which is the 17th, May 17th, so 2 weeks from May 17th, we'll do the giveaway drawing, whatever date that is. I'll figure it out and I'll put it in the text below. And in the giveaway video, there's going to be a special giveaway video. To enter the giveaway, you just got to subscribe and you got to post a topic you would like to see covered. So with that in mind, hope you guys all have a good one. Hope you guys are staying safe and being healthy, and I'll catch you later.
Welcome to Tuesdays with Nicole. This week I'll feature a villain known as Hans Drubel from the Adarath campaign. The story of Hans Drubel is a twisted tale of sorrow, deceit, and murder. Hundreds of years ago, Hans was a renowned hero and devout paladin of Pelor, god of the sun. He was also a loving husband and father, but on his daughter's 8th birthday, he and his family mysteriously vanished. Years later, Hans returned to his homeland, alone and very altered. He carried the unholy blade Ravage. He entered into alliances with infamous demons, and began to commit acts of unspeakable evil. Hans closely resembles Russell Crowe and his appearance in Gladiator. I also chose a picture of Clive Owen to reference his stern and remorseful expression for Hans's face. He's pictured in this sketch wearing his paladin armor. However, he also wears a tunic of Tharizdun, god of eternal darkness and opposing deity of Pelor. When creating character illustrations, the background is just as important to the piece as the character. It has to tell a story and put the character in context, while not distracting from the main subject. I know it's difficult to recognize the gray blobs, but I put Hans surrounded by murdered villagers with their houses on fire. See, you can understand more about the character's story with this background than if I had just had Hans standing there alone. It's much more dynamic. Many rumors circled around what happened to Hans next. It took a group of adventurers traveling to the outer planes to find out the truth. Hans's body was being controlled by a demon, and his soul was stuck in the outer planes. The link between the demon and Hans allows any emotion his soul feels to translate to his body, so Hans's face is usually depressed or sad while he's committing evil deeds, which is why I have him crying in this sketch. My sketch may be complete, but the fate of Hans Drubel has yet to be decided. Follow the Adderwraith campaign on Obsidian Portal to find out if his soul can be saved.